She said, that I can post pictures. So if you see a group of 3 or 6, you should question maybe this is a paid one. If you see just one-on-one, obviously it could be a paid one as well. Other than that, these sessions should always be free. We have been operating Parinama for close to 10 years now. So we're going to really mark a very big milestone. And what we have seen is when we did start, right, we had students who were, third grade or fifth grade, and those students have all either become college graduates or even when we did start, there were students who already volunteered with us, and those high schoolers were in 8th or 9th grade. So the first thing we identified is we have a big alumni network. Our alumni network is something that I did not realize. Once I started getting messages from folks like saying, Uncle, I'm right now doing, medical school, I'm in dental school, I've already graduated. That's when it shocked me because I've seen these kids as kids of that age or kids who are in the front who are still questioning my age, whether I'm 5 years or 55 years. I still have to argue with the young kid how old I am. But we have seen kids at very different ages, right? So we have seen teenagers of all different stages. So these sessions, we are going to have at least 10 of them. You should start seeing one by one the next set of sessions that are coming up. The one that Zareen is going to kick off, Zareen has been really, really helpful. Let's give her a big round of applause. I would like to thank because I reviewed all the slides. I'm really shocked by the amount of message that she has put in. She has done a lot of work. And I was trying to tell her, hey, this is something that we thought we'll do over a course of 10 or 15 sessions. And why did you put everything together? And Sareen said, oh, I saw the word comprehensive, which of course makes sense, right? So it's a comprehensive deck. Obviously, it means it has a lot of stuff that it's going to be asking about or talking about. The plan is, today we will spend an hour, exactly an hour from now, which is like 3 o'clock. We'll stop the live streaming, okay, and you are welcome to stay. Zareen is here, okay, as long as she feels comfortable, and if you can, make her feel comfortable, she will answer all your questions. She is not going to go after, the session, right? But we will definitely stop the live stream and make sure that people who are watching later on YouTube or wherever, they should not be hearing all the background noise and stuff. The idea today was, to give a comprehensive idea about college and the admissions process. And some of the questions that are coming from the students all the time is, how do I really get to the next stage, right? Am I a junior? Am I a senior? What are the timelines that I need to follow? How do I pick a college? How do I pick a major? And what is, this thing about RD, RA, REA, CE, EC, lot of acronyms and timelines and college, in terms of how to be nice to your teachers and get some recommendation letters. When do you get those recommendation letters? Is it too late? Is it too early? When do you start? When do you end? What kind of APs to pick? What type of IBs to pick if IB is offered in your school? And does it really mean anything in terms of extracurriculars? What should I list? Yeah, should it be a paid internship? It should be a volunteer. It should be depth versus breadth. I think Zareen is covering some of those, which is more impact versus saying I was in 15 different organizations or clubs. Is it better to be in just one, but make me some impact that you can really articulate? Do we really need 10 or 15 extracurricular activities? If you do have 10 of them, which app will be using? Is it in Common App? Is it in Applied Texas? So she will answer a lot of those. After this session is done, again, the next session will be an overview from folks who are in admissions office. So we are bringing Taylor, who was from admissions office, and also another person who's going to be joining us, Jonah. She will also be giving us inputs. So that is the other side of the coin. Like when they look at 27,000 application, each of your application that you put in about 6 to 10 days or 10 hours of work, they are just going to spend 7 to 9 minutes. It's very ironic. Like we don't even pass the test of, and do we even qualify? Do you have a GPA that qualifies? Do you have a SAT score or ACT score that qualifies for them to even take a look at it? So we'll be talking about those from their perspective, where it's more brutal. They really honestly don't care how much time you spend. They are looking for specific information that they need to see a fit for their college. If it's, that's a different lens that we are going to talk about. Then we're going to bring more and more of folks from these alumni network will be talking. Some of them will be online. Rima is organizing all of these, so give her a big round of applause. She is really putting a lot of effort. And these will also be online. Some of these, because we are going to have folks who will be joining from Arizona or Iowa, they are not going to be here, obviously. So they'll be doing all these online sessions. With that said, I'll just hand it over to Zareen, and then please, work with her. If she wants you to interrupt and ask questions, you can. If she wants you to store the questions to them, it's all up to her to decide how she wants to do. But thank you again, Zareen. Thanks for that.
Okay. Hi everyone, I'm Zareen. So really quickly, thank you so much. And we're going to be talking about navigating college admissions. So obviously there's going to be a lot of information that I'm covering. So I do want to get an idea of like how old you guys are and what grade you guys are in. So for show of hands, is anyone a junior or senior? All right. And then what about like in high school, like 9th or 10th grade? All right. Is anyone younger than high school? Okay, awesome. That's perfect. Like I think these are ideas that you should start considering maybe around like 10th grade, and then going forward, right? So really quickly, a little bit about me. I did include my LinkedIn and my email address, in case anyone wanted to like contact me later. But I applied to college during the 2022-2023 cycle. And before that, I graduated from Vista Ridge, which is super close to here. And while I was there, I interned and worked at Parinama up until last year, actually. I'm currently a third year senior at UC Berkeley. So what that means is that I'm starting my third year, but I've completed all my like requirements to graduate, so I can graduate. But what I am going to do is I'm going to take on a second major, and I'm going to graduate in 4 years like everyone else does. So if you don't know where UC Berkeley is, it's in the Bay Area, so it's like really close to San Francisco, as well as like San Jose, kind of the Silicon Valley area. And I'm studying molecular and cell biology, neuroscience, and clinical psych. So that is very much like aligned with the pre-med track, but I am also super interested in writing. So I have a writing emphasis. I work in the Daily Cal, which is the city of Berkeley's newspaper, and I also have my own blog, just like a fun thing that I do on the side. So I say that to kind of emphasize that like going to college is not just about academics. It's also about social life, about like, what you like doing and things like that. All right, so really quickly, there's like three main kind of things that I'm going to talk about today. So we have understanding college admissions, key timeline, as well as I have like some tips and stuff on like essays and planning. And then as for questions, if I share something and you have a question on it, feel free to just raise your hand and ask me. That way we can kind of like go through it as we go. All right, so first things first, I do want to just kind of go over some things to consider when you're applying to college, right? So you have to consider a lot of comparisons, right? So are you applying in-state, out-of-state? Are you considering a school that's more in it, like more urban setting, where like the city is your campus, or do you want something that's a little smaller, something more rural? And you also have to consider size. Like UC Berkeley, for example, is a huge school. A&M, huge school. UT also a pretty big school. But there are also like some like liberal arts colleges, right, that in the Northeast, and those are way smaller. And that's like gives you smaller class sizes. It gives you more interaction with your professors. So that's something to consider. And another thing that I think a lot of people think about is like prestige, right, and cost. So what are you getting from the college, and what can you provide to the college? And then for cost, that kind of comes down to like which colleges can give you scholarships. There's merit scholarships, there's need-based scholarships. And especially if you're applying from Texas, I do want to say, in case you don't know, it's a requirement that you complete the class. So even if you don't need any need-based aid, it's important that you do it, because the earlier you do it, the more likely you might get scholarships from colleges. And it's also something that is required to graduate. Second thing, classifications. So I don't know if you guys have heard about these, but you have READ schools, target schools, and safety schools. And I'll go more into like what they mean. But READ schools are schools that you might get into, but honestly, they might be a little bit more difficult, like a little bit harder to get into. Target schools are schools that you'll probably get into because your like accomplishments align with what other students have gotten in the past have. And then you have safety schools. Safety schools are schools where it's like you're 100% gonna get it, right? So if you're applying from Texas, this is actually like a pretty good thing that you're applying from Texas, because if you're in the top, I think 10% of your class, you have automatic admission to all public schools in Texas, except for UT. So what that means is like if you're in the top 10% of your class, basically A&M can be your safety, because you're most likely gonna get it because you have like that class standing. But even if you don't, safety schools would just be schools where you know for a fact you're gonna get in, either because of higher acceptance rates or because you have like similar accomplishments as everyone else or better. And then lastly, this is what I call the thrive factor. This is not something that like you'll hear from other people. But when I say thrive factor, what I mean is like you have to consider the context and comprehensiveness of the college that you're applying to or attend. So what this means is like let's say you get into Harvard and then you get into another school that's not as well, right? It doesn't mean that you're going to be a better fit for Harvard than the other school. So when I say thrive factor, it means you have to consider a lot of different things. You have to consider the social aspect. You have to consider like what you like doing. Do they have what you want? So for example, when I was like touring all these colleges to decide where to apply to, I also toured Harvard. I toured Yale, I toured like UC Berkeley, all these schools. And Berkeley spoke to me. Like when I went there, I was like, I love the city. Like I love this place. And I want to live there for 4 years. So it's a good school, but also I have to like think about all these other things, right? And I've had a great time being there for like 3 years now. And I think if I hadn't considered the thrive factor, then I could have gone to a different school that maybe ranked better, but it just wasn't like the perfect fit for me. All right, so this kind of brings us to questioning like, what do colleges even look for, right? I think these are things that you do hear from other people, right? So first and foremost, college and applying to college is very much a holistic process. So it's not just your grades or your GPA. Like you can have a perfect GPA and not get in as like compared to someone else who has a lower GPA but has done more things or like done more for a particular thing. So holistic achievement, so they care about grades, of course, extracurriculars, essays, letters of recommendation, as well as context, right? So what this means is like, let's say you have less time to do a particular extracurricular because you have to help out at home, because you have to work, because you have to do all these other things. That counts. That is something that you include in the application process. Like, let's say, oh, I'm taking care of my grandma, right? And that's why I can't do this particular extracurricular because I don't need it. That is a good thing. That you can put in your application and they'll be like, okay, this person can give time to their family and they're doing well. So this is something that's like kind of important. And the reason I put Texas next to it is because if you're trying to go to UT Austin, I do think grades have slightly more importance than all these other things. It's just as important, but if you manage to be like in the top 5% of your class, then getting to Texas is going to be way easier than, let's say, if you're not, right? And then, yeah, kind of related to that, every part of your application will speak to the counselors. And they want a story, not just a resume. So they don't want a list of all the things you did, right? So let's say you're writing a personal statement. You don't want it to just be like, oh, I did this, I volunteered here, I wrote a book, I did this, I did this. They don't really care. They care about who you are. So in my personal statement, I wrote about how I had to move from Maryland to Texas when I was in 11th grade. And that was a really hard time in my life because I had the SAT coming up, I had like the like PSAT, like all these things together. And at the same time, I had to literally move like across the country. And it was really difficult for me. And that's what I wrote about. I literally just wrote about how it was hard for me to like adjust, but I did, right? And that's what they want to know, right? Like, yes.
Sorry, then I have a very quick question. When you talk about this 5% and 10%, right? If someone is in 10%, within 10%, right? And they've taken all the AP courses, right? And the other person has not taken much AP courses, the harder course was taken, and he or she is top 10%. The other person is not taken, and he or she is in 5%. How the college counselor kind of validating that?
Okay, so this actually I think is super important for UT Austin specifically. So for example, if you're trying to go to UT Austin, right? The automatic admission is only for liberal arts majors. So what that means, if you're doing like international studies, like in terms of diplomacy, like related stuff, you'll get in. Both those people will probably get it. But if you're doing something that's in the sciences, like anything in CNS, honestly, like College of Natural Sciences, then you actually have to like fully apply and everything, and you could not get it. So let's say you're in the top 5%, right? And you haven't taken all these CP courses, you still have automatic admission to all of like the other public Texas colleges. But you're probably not as competitive as someone who's not in the top 10%, but has like done everything else. Right? Like you can have a lower GPA, obviously, if you're not in the top 10%, but you've taken like more rigorous classes, you've like done more. That makes you more competitive for other colleges as well as for UT specifically. So when I moved, like the GPA system here is like very different from Maryland. So my GPA dropped. Like I went from like top 0.5% to like maybe like 8-9%. And at that point, every single person I know from my school that got into UC Berkeley, they were like top 10, like top of the top of my school. And I was like number 60. And I still left. And it was because I did all these classes, I did all these other, like other things. So I guess to answer your question, I think if you're trying to go to UT Austin or like another kind of more prestigious school, the class rank is not going to matter that much. But if you're trying to go to any other public Texas college, then you could have, like you could be in the top 5% and get in and be not in the top 10%. So I think it just depends on like where you're applying. Does that answer the question?
Yes, yes.
Okay, awesome, yeah. Yeah, and then the next thing I was talking about like GPA and test scores. So this honestly depends. I'm not really sure how they're changing it these days. But when I was applying to college, it was like right after COVID. So a lot of colleges were not considering test scores. And since then, a lot of colleges don't want your test scores. So unless you think your test score is helping you, don't submit it, basically. But also do like look at the college because some colleges would prefer that you submit your scores and you don't. And then I guess this goes back to like the 5%, 10% question. Like not all 4.0s are equal. You can have straight A's in on-level classes, or you can have some A's and some B's in AP classes, and they're going to favor the second one, right? Because you're like the rigor is important. Okay, now we get into a lot of like technical stuff. So definitely ask me if you have questions. So the first thing, application cycle, right? There's 4 different cycles. But technically it's 2 cycles. There's an early cycle and a regular cycle. But so you have early decision, which is binding to do on November 1st. If you apply early decision, it means if you get into that college, you have to go no matter what. I think the only case where they are okay with you not going is if you like can't afford it. And there's like no way you can get a loan. In that case, you don't have to go. But early decision basically just means you apply to one college, you get in, you go. Done. Early action is the same thing, November 1st, but it's non-binding, which means you could get in and then choose not to go. So I think the kind of main thing with early decision and early action is you actually have a higher acceptance rate because less people are applying. So it's only slightly higher, but you have a higher chance of getting in if you apply early than if you apply regular decision. The only thing is like with early decision, you can't really compare offers from different schools because you only are applying to that one school. Whereas early action, you will know that you got in, but you don't necessarily have to commit. So that's kind of a good thing. And then there's restrictive early action, which is non-binding, but you can only apply to like 1 or 2 schools depending on like which school you're applying to. So this goes for Harvard, Yale, Stanford, and some other also some of the more top schools, where they will like it won't be binding, but at the same time they won't let you apply to multiple. So I think the main thing to keep in mind here between ED and EA is that ED you only apply to 1 school, REA you only apply to 1 school, but EA, early action, you can apply to as many EA schools as you want. So you can apply to 5 schools on November 1st and then know by December which school you got into. Right? Or there's a regular decision, which is what most people do, which is what I did. I actually didn't apply to any schools early because I didn't know where I wanted to go. And this is generally they're due like end of December to like January 15th. And it gives you more time to work on your application, obviously, because it's not due November 1st. And so you just have kind of more time to work on it, and you can apply to as many schools as you want. It doesn't matter. The only thing is, it's a more competitive pool because naturally there's more people applying. All right, and then
Quick question I have, I'm so sorry.
Yes.
I'm asking so many questions.
no, of course.
It's a very quick one. So when you talk about this, early decision and early action. So, one candidate has applied in 5 colleges, not 5 universities, that's what I thought. So 5 universities have applied, and now if I'm going to compare with the reach. Okay, early days, one university is saying, okay, you selected, okay, for example, A&M, you were selected, right? And that is not actually the portion started. So can we secure that one? He also will take a sweet time to decide after 3 months, okay, let me come back with other universities come back, then I will.
For early action,
Uh-huh.
I think it depends on schools. So some of them, it will be like a slightly earlier deadline. So like most schools, regular decision, you have to decide by May, like May 1st. But then for early action, you have to decide by like March. So it honestly just depends on the school, they'll tell you. But you do have more time to decide, whereas early decision, you can't decide. Like, yeah, I applied to Harvard, I get it, I have to. Like that kind of thing. But yes.
Early decision, can you also apply to like early action?
Actually, it depends. Like different schools have different rules, so you have to like kind of read and see if you're allowed to. But generally speaking, you only want to, if you apply early decision, you only want to apply early decision. Because then if you get into that school, it's kind of just like a waste of time and energy to like apply to all these other schools because you already got into that one use. You know? Yeah. So it kind of depends. Like different schools just have like different like rules. But this is when it comes to applying. There's a lot of different ways to apply to college. There are basically 5 portals. So there's the Common App, which is most likely what you guys will be using the most. There's Coalition, there's UC Application, there's Apply Texas, and then there's school-specific portals. I applied using all of the 5 methods. So I'm a little bit insane. I applied to 45 colleges. Like I said, because I had just moved here and I was like, I am not staying in Texas. I'm moving. I hate this place. I know Texas now, but now that I only come home for breaks. But I applied to 45 schools because I just like wasn't sure where to go and I kind of wanted to keep my options open. And I do not recommend doing that. I think apply to 20 schools max. And that's where the Common App comes in. It only lets you apply to 20 schools. So you can pick any 20 schools that they have on there. You can apply. Coalition, honestly, I wouldn't really recommend, but it's just like a smaller subset of schools. And they sometimes will give you waivers for like application fees based on like need-based data. So access for underrepresented students. So honestly, like if you have that password, I think it's very beneficial. But otherwise, I think oftentimes it's like a little bit more complicated because you have to just like individually apply. Whereas Common App, you fill out one application and it goes to all of the schools. And then you have supplemental questions from every single school that you have to apply, like you can answer separately. Okay, so more on the Common App and Coalition. So they both have one main essay, which is your personal statement, also called a Common App essay. And then you have to fill out activities, you have to fill out awards. And then you just have like some more like questions that they'll ask you about like who you are. Right? And then most schools have it. And then for University of California schools, you have to do the UC application. So that you can apply to only UC schools. And that is honestly, I think a little bit easier. Like I think I had an easier time doing the UC application and Common App, just because the UC application, it's only one application for all of the UC schools. And you get to pick which schools like get your application. So I applied to only 4. So I applied to like Berkeley, UCLA, Santa Barbara, and San Diego. And then I ended up, once I got my results, I said, but they only have 4 personal insight questions. So what that means is there isn't like 50 million supplemental questions like every other school. You just answer 4 questions regardless of which school you're applying to, and you can pick. So there's 8 prompts. You pick 4 of them. You answer, and then you don't need to submit letters of recommendation. But if they want one, they'll ask, like they'll email you and they'll be like, we want letters of recommendation. But yeah, and then you have Apply Texas. This I would only use if you're applying to like some of the smaller schools here, like UT Arlington or like other like small UTs. So a lot of people will use this for maybe like UTD and other schools that don't have the Common App, or the schools that are not on Common App. But generally speaking, if you're like applying to like a broader range of schools, you don't need Apply Texas. But that one also you have to individually apply to every single school. And then finally, there are school-specific portals. This is for schools like MIT and Georgetown and some other like, kind of, I would say like more private schools. And that one, you just have to basically just go on the school's website and apply through. And some schools, like not a lot of schools have that, but some schools do. So basically, long story short, there are these 5 different ways to apply, but I would recommend the Common App just because you can apply with a bunch of different schools together. All right, next. So this is about building a college list. So like I said, I applied to 45 colleges. Don't do that. Instead, think about like what you want from a college and what you can provide to that college. So does the college have your major? Does it have programs that are related to your major? Does it have like the things that you want to do around, right? Like social life. Does it have, do you like vibes, basically? Are there clubs that you want to join? Is there the diversity that you want? You can think about like, is it in a city? Is it in a more suburban setting? Is it more closed off? Is it more open to the public? Like all these things. And then you want to consider cost and financial aid. So what are you able to afford? What are you willing to pay for? What are you willing to take a loan for? You know, things like that. And then finally, selectivity. So this is like the most important thing in terms of ranking your colleges. So you have to know your stats and the college's stats. So for example, if I'm applying to a college and let's say my SAT score is, I don't know, 1450, and this school has an average SAT score of 1500. That makes that school a read school for me because my score is lower than their average. But then if you match the average, then it can be more of a target school. Now, I will say these days, applying to college is kind of like a lottery. Like you could be like the most perfect person and you won't get in just because the competition is just like that bad. But I think if you like kind of are careful about applying to college and doing all these things, the chances are like pretty good. Yeah. So safety schools, again, like I said, you want to apply to like 2 or 3 safety schools, and then for the person to get in, you have target schools, which are going to just like, okay, like I'm very similar to all these other people that go to this college. And then finally, you have read schools where it's just like more so highly selective schools, the IVs, public IVs, things like that. Okay, and then I actually also included this like list of places that you can look. So I'm assuming most people have TikTok. If you go on TikTok, there's so much information. It's actually so helpful. I'm about to apply to that school, and I have gotten so much information from her, and it's helped me prepare for the exam. And it's fun because there's so yeah, you can look on in YouTube, like on TikTok, memes.com is pretty good, College Board, and all these like other places, and you can look at a lot of information about this. But I think long story short, when it comes to building your college list, you just have to like think about what you want and where you fit in. Right? This is where like the thrive factor comes back in, because it's not just about the prestige of the college, it's also about like, does the college want you? And are you gonna have fun at this college? Because I will also say like it's 4 years of your life, it's a long time to commit. So you don't want to go somewhere that's gonna make you sad. You know, you want to be able to have the rigorous academics, but also have friends, you know, like have a good time. And I think that kind of like for me, given that I didn't really know what I wanted, I applied to a bunch of schools because I was like, I need to just get everything. But I think my sister's applying to college this year, and I told her like, do not apply to more than 20 schools. And so she's kind of working on making her list right now. And I would say if you are a senior, if you're an upcoming senior in high school, it's a good time to like start making your college list and like writing your essays and things like that. This brings me to majors and minors. So obviously, if you go on the college website, you can see what majors and minors they have, but you want to, you know, figure out what you want to major in, right? What do you like to do? And also, what are you good at? What are you not good at? And also, you have to think about, okay, what are the career prospects for this particular major? So you can look and you can see, okay, like if I do this and I want to become this, do I have to get a master's? Do I have to get a PhD? Do I have to get a doctorate? Like, what do I have to do after college? And you want to think about that when you apply to this particular major. Also, a lot of times, colleges have different acceptance rates for different majors. So for example, at Berkeley, I applied into molecular and cell biology, and one of my friends, also from my high school, applied into EECS, which is electrical engineering and computer science, which I think is a more popular major like in this area. And as a matter of fact, it's harder for him to get into Berkeley than for me to get into Berkeley, simply because like EECS and that major is more selective than my major. Now, it was still hard for me to get in, but it was just slightly easier because it's just not as competitive. Also because it's in Silicon Valley, right? So there's a lot of tech hubs, not as much like medicine stuff. So, you know, it's a little easier. But yeah, and then also I want to say it's okay to be undeclared. Like a lot of schools are totally okay with you figuring out what you want to do. And when it comes to the IBs, I would say like Brown University is the perfect place for this. At Brown, there's like an open curriculum, which means you can literally make your own major. You can pick whatever you want to do. Now the acceptance rate is like very low, but so you have to definitely be good at like a lot of different things. But it's okay to be undeclared. If you don't know what you want to do, that's okay. But yeah, but I think largely you just want to like look at the specific college that you're applying to. All right, next. Do you guys know what a brag sheet is? No? Okay. Brag sheet, basically brag about yourself. You're like, okay, I did this, I did this, I did this. Awesome, I'm an amazing person. Right? So you want to make a brag list. Or a brag sheet, I guess. And I also put the FAFSA things, but just want to have fun. I think it opens in October. Okay, so application portals will ask you for a lot of things, like I said, right? They'll ask you for personal info, your academic history. I put the UCAG requirement. What that means, you'll see it on the UC application if you decide to apply. But it's basically just like you need to have certain classes from each category. Otherwise, you can't apply. But generally speaking, if you graduate from a high school in Texas, you will have those requirements. Then you have test scores, SAT, ACT, AP, and IB exams. I would say AP exams, if you score below a 3, you can get that removed from your score report. Don't submit that. If you get 3 or above, even if it's 3, like I think that's pretty good, you can submit that. IB exams, like same thing. For SAT and ACT, I would say only submit if your score is higher than the school's average. And then a lot of people will obviously by default take the SAT, but if you're good at analytical thinking and like just more like analysis, I would say take the ACT, you might score higher, simply because there's a science section and it's literally just about like reading graphs and like trying to figure out if you can get information from passages. And it's a lot more fast paced, but I think it shows like more of your strength. Additionally, ACT has a writing component where you can literally like write. It's basically like an argumentative essay, and I got a perfect score on that. Now that I could never show that using the SAT because there is no writing section where I'm like literally writing, you know. So yeah, so test scores. Next, activities. So you can include up to 10 activities, and if you have good enough activities, I would include them. If you do more than that, pick and choose, pick the 10 best. So this is for Common App, and then you want to include a lot of things, as including like how many hours did you spend doing this activity? What did you do? Right? If you're in a club, how did you help this club grow? It's not just, oh, I'm a member of this. That's not going to get you in club, right? What did you do for that? Right? Like if you're a part of American Red Cross, you volunteered. Okay, how did you help other communities? Right? It's not just about, oh, I spent 15 hours doing this, but what did you do? So a lot of the activity section is up to like, it has like a lot of different things I'll talk about in the next slide, but you want to just have activities that are good, not only for yourself and your own interest, but also for the community. And then next you have the personal essay, which I talked about, and then school-specific supplementals. They're usually only 250 words. Some schools, like in USC, they have questions that are like, what's your favorite snack? And it's like 2 words. So a lot of schools have a lot of good questions. And if I really want to like kind of boil it down, it's honestly a vibe check. Like if the college vibes with you, you'll get in. And so it's not about being like, okay, what does the college want to hear? It's who am I and how can I be a part of this college, right? So when you make a brag sheet, you want to include all these things. And you want to include your favorite classes at school, what you've done, your leadership, work, etc. What awards you've gotten, what colleges you want to go to, all these things. And then when you ask for like the recommendation letters, you send it to those teachers. And then they know all the things that you've done. And they can include that in the recommendation letter. They'll be like, oh, like I taught this person chemistry, but I know that they also did this. Now they wouldn't know that if you don't tell them. That's why you have a brag sheet. So yeah, I think it's very important to have a brag sheet. Usually you want to have it by the beginning of your senior year. And when you're asking for recommendation letters, like don't just send it to a teacher, like talk to them first. And then when they're okay with writing a recommendation letter, then you're like, okay, here's my brag sheet, right? Okay. Okay. Actually, yeah, so the timeline, I kind of already talked about this, honestly, but you just want to have your essays like ready to go earlier rather than later. And when I say there are supplementals, a lot of supplementals are the same. They'll just be like, why do you want to go to this college? Right? And it's kind of hard to figure out why. So you want to do your research on the college and be like, okay, there's this specific class with a specific professor that I want to take at this specific school and I know I'll be able to do it. And you want to include stuff like that, like very informal information in your answers, because it will let them know that you know where you're going if you get to that college, right? So August is when the Common App and UC will open. So I think think it's maybe August 1st, you can make an account, right? October, November, early action, early decision deadlines. UC application is actually due on November 30th, as well as CSU. I don't think people from Texas usually apply to CSU, but that's just California State Universities. But I know a lot of people don't apply to UCs, also due on November 30th. And then for us, they'll be due at 2 a.m. Because it's specific time. And then January 1 to 15th, the rest of the deadlines. March and April decisions come out. I think IB Day during my year was March 30th. So all of the Ivy League schools as well as Berkeley comes out on that day. So all the decisions just came at once. And then May 1st, just commitment day. So if you apply a regular decision, that's when you have to know where you're going. And you have to tell them that you're going. And then, yeah, so I think this is where kind of like, there's a to-do list, as well as I included this college guys, like college essay guys application timeline. So this is this person that has like a website, and it includes a lot of different things about like writing essays and like a billion examples and which person got into which schools. So if you just search that up, I think that was like very helpful for me because it's hard to like get someone to look over your essays every single time you edit it. But if you look at these examples, they can kind of see like where you're at. Yeah, so you want to finalize your college list as well as collect reg letters by maybe like September of your senior year. And any test that you have to take it by the beginning of your senior year. You want to have your activities list, your resume, everything good to go. For UT specifically, there's a specific format you can follow for your resume, and it's on the website. And for UT, it's like kind of different because for reg letters, you have to invite your teacher through the portal, and then they'll submit it for you. And then finally, final essay polishing. You want to just do that maybe like a week or so before it's due, but you want to like kind of get it done, have people proofread it, read it out loud. You want to make sure in your essays that you sound like yourself, right? So a lot of people when they're writing essays, they'll make it super formal, or they'll make it so that it's just like, okay, this is what the college wants to know, but it's not that. You're just answering the question as yourself. So in my essays, I used like first person pronouns. I said, I want to do this, I want to do this, you know, stuff like that. And I thought it was very helpful because it's showing them that you are your own person. So choose stories over accomplishments. So don't write about winning a game. Write about like, okay, this happened to me and this is how it shaped. So that's like me writing about moving, or me writing about like something that happened in my family, or like, you know, things like that. It's like something that makes you who you are. And then I wrote vulnerability wins, but when I say that, I also do want to include to not write about anything that's potentially triggering. So to a lot of people, things like depression and like, you know, other mental health stuff can be triggering. So don't write about that generally. But you do want to like write about who you are as a person. You want to focus on impact as well as reflection. So you don't want to say, I played chess 30 hours a day or whatever, you can do that. But you just play chess, let's say 1 hour a day, right? 30 hours. And then you won a really big game. They don't even care that you won the game. They just care what did you learn during your like tenure of like practice, right? Things like that. So just about like the impact that it had on you as well as what you learned. And then, yeah, this is what I was saying. Like your voice matters more than your vocabulary. So of course you want to write well and you want to write grammatically correctly, but also write as yourself. And then types of essays, I kind of already went over this. We have the PIQs for the UC applications, Common App personal statement, and then supplemental essays for all the schools on Common App. And you can also check out Prep Scholar. They're also like a very well-known, like I guess it's just a website, but it's a blog and it includes a lot of information about schools. And it's like a lot of people have written there, so you can kind of see. And yeah, so afterwards, I think the last thing is the spike approach. Does anyone know what the spike approach is? No? Okay, so spike, obviously something that's like, you know, like higher than everything else. So spike means, okay, you have these grades, you have these scores, you have all of this. But why do I want you to come to my college? Right? You have to have something. So for me, that was writing and that was debate. So those are things that I did in addition to like all these other academic things that everybody else is doing. Right? So it's just like, that's what makes me different. This is what I want to do. This is what I spent a lot of time on. So I've been writing for like years, right? I was in my high school newspaper. I was in my high school newspaper even after I moved to Texas. And I work in the newspaper now in Berkeley. And this is kind of my spike, right? Because I'm saying, okay, I want to be a doctor, but I love writing. This is what I want to do, right? That's like in addition to everything else. I could have a 4.0 GPA and no spike and not get it, right? It's important to like have something. And this is the depth over breadth. So you could have a million things, but if you're not doing anything for them, it's not going to help you. So you want to just do something that's really meaningful. And yeah, and also you don't have to be president of a club to have a meaningful impact, right? You can say I was a member, but I did this difficulty arose, and this is how I helped solve it, right? Those are super important. And then this is what I was saying, right? Like atypical activities do count, right? Caregiving, family roles, hobbies. If you have not TikTok channel, a YouTube channel or like a TikTok page, right? You can say, oh, I make videos. Fun, include that, right? So these are just like a lot of things about essays. Like don't make it robotic, make it who you are. I actually do want to say one of my PIQs for Berkeley was about joining Zoom meetings and how much I hated it over COVID. Like that was literally my entire essay, and I'm here, right? So it's literally just about what do you want to write about. But when I wrote about that, I didn't just say, oh, I hate it, right? I connected it back to myself. You know, I wrote about, okay, like I don't like going to school when all I see is like boxes, right? And I kind of talked about that. Okay, and then these are some more structured things. So obviously I don't have too much time to go in depth, but personal statement tips. So there's like I think 8 prompts. You can pick one, you can write for your personal statement, but it's largely just about who you are. And yeah, this is I've kind of already said this, but you want to show who you are. Don't just say I did this, but you get like why, how, etc. And then when you're writing, you often want to start with a book, so like a vivid moment or a question. So often when I start writing essays or things, I'll like say like a random thing that has nothing to do with anything, just like super random. And then I start my actual essay, and they read the first line and they're like, oh, I want to know more. And then you come back to it in the middle, and then you come back to it at the end, and it all just connects into like one cohesive piece. Then you have your body, right? So development, growth, struggle, change. So oftentimes your personal statement, it's like something that happened, right? You're writing about a story. So what happened? What issues happened? Like how did you fix it? How did you get better? How did you not get better? What do you want to work on? And then finally you have conclusion, which is just your reflection. And then for supplemental essays, these are super short, so you want to get to the point, right? So it's like 250 words, sometimes even 150 words, and you have to explain why you want to go to college, why you like this place. For some of my colleges, I literally wrote about like something that's there. So I think for one of my schools, I was like, oh, there's a lake nearby, and I want to sit there with my friends. I wrote that in my actual application. So it's just about like why do you want to go to that school, right? It doesn't have to be just about academics. And then finally, community identity challenge. You want to be personal, basically, long story short. And for supplemental essays, so I would recycle when possible. So what I mean by that is you can use the same essay from multiple schools, but you want to change it. However, if you write a why us essay and you simply just change the name of the college and the essay still makes sense, that's not a good essay. It has to be different enough that like if a USC admissions officer read that versus a UCLA admissions officer read that, they should be able to tell that it was for their school. Now I say that, however, UCLA does not have a YS on it, but USC does. All right. And then activity section, kind of back to the activities that I was talking about. You only have 10 spaces, so you want to pick wisely. You want to prioritize things with bigger impacts. You want to use action verbs. So this people will tell you when you make a LinkedIn account or your resume, they'll be like, okay, don't say I did this, say like this made a huge impact or like whatever it was. And then finally, you want to have descriptions within, I think maybe it was like 100 characters. It was super short description. But I think they sometimes change it. So you'll see it on the Common App. And then anything counts, right? Clubs, sports, jobs, caregiving, art, activism, research, anything. So I included research that I did in like middle school that I continued throughout high school. And that was one of my activities. So it's kind of just what you want to do. You don't have to fill all 10 if whatever you have is like more important, right? But it's just about like having a passion, having some sort of consistency, something that ties everything together. And then for recommendations, you want to ask earlier. So throughout high school, so most of you guys are in high, or all of you guys are in high school. So what you want to do is just have good relationships with your teachers and have like a more personal relationship with them. And near the end of your junior year or like summer of senior year, you want to ask them if they're willing to write you a recommendation letter. And generally, you want to choose 11th grade teachers because they're the most recent teachers you'll have before you apply. And a lot of these teachers are very like used to writing like recommendation letters. And when you give them your brag sheet, they can like write you very good recommendation letters usually. And yeah, and then also you want to have a good relationship with your counselor because your counselor will also have to write a recommendation for you. And you just want to ensure that you stand out from every other student that they write a recommendation for. So I think largely it's just about maintaining relationships with your teachers. teachers as well as other people at your school. You can also ask for recommendation letters from other people, like let's say you're in an organization, like you can ask someone from the organization as well. All right, and then picking extracurriculars, this is kind of the last thing that I'm talking about today. I know it's a lot of information, but this is just about, okay, how do I pick what to do, right? So there's a table after this just a second, but it's all about what would I do even if no one was watching. So don't do something just to pad your college application, right? You want to do something because you actually want to do it, right? Because you could be involved in every club that everybody else is involved with. You could be in, like, you could be in DECA, you could be in HOSA, you could be in all these things, but what are you doing, right? Yeah, so if you're like into science, you can join STEM clubs, you can volunteer, you can have a project, right? You can volunteer at a hospital, things like that. If you love writing, like I started a blog, you can start a blog. You can, join competitions, you can do all these other things that are like relevant to what you want to do. And then lastly, so show commitment and growth. So what I mean by this is like, if you are a part of a club for 1 year, it's really not going to do much. But if you're a part of a club for 3 years and you slowly like climb the ladder and you do better, that's important. You can start off as a member and then become secretary and then become vice president. That's good, right? So it's just like the more responsibility you have, it's like better than being a part of a bunch of different things without as much impact. And yeah, and then initiative, right? College is one initiative. So this is kind of what I came up with. So to show passion, you can do things like research, art, writing, music, activism, things you are passionate about. For leadership, you could be like president of a club, you could found a club, you can be a team captain for something. I was in student gov as well. For service, you can volunteer, you can tutor, I did both of those things. You can have advocacy work. I used to run an Instagram account as like an anonymous activist when I was like 14 years old. And I kind of continued that for like 4 or 5 years. And that was like a whole thing that I used to do. And then you have career aligned things. So for example, if you want to be in a particular career, you want to shadow someone from that career, you can have internships, jobs, competitions. These are a little bit harder to do just because you have to kind of already have some sort of portfolio to work with these people. But you just want to like work on passion projects and it can help you connect with all these like other people. And then I kind of already touched on all of these, but quality or quantity always. Self-initiated projects are super good because they're like, okay, this person doesn't really have anyone else supporting them, but they're doing it, right? And then unpaid family responsibilities. Extracurriculars are just kind of your way of showing who you are outside of academics. And that's kind of how I think about picking extracurriculars. Like when I did it, I'm a very indecisive person. I was in like 20 clubs, right? Like freshman year, I was in 20 clubs. And then I was like, actually, I want to do this. And then I dropped it. By the time I was in senior year, I probably had like, maybe, like I had less than 10, right? Because I was like, these are things that I want to focus on, and that's what I did. And then a lot of times, if you're involved in like your, let's say, cultural or religious community, you can also include that. And then, yeah, and I think extracurriculars are also a great way to find more people to write recommendation letters for you, because people run those, right? So they'll generally willing to like support you in your career. You can find mentors, which is super important because you can ask them for anything. All right, and then I included a lot of different resources here. So it's just kind of a rundown, just like the last slide, right? So things to consider when you apply to college. Again, in state, out of state, generally in state is cheaper. You have a size, smaller liberal college or a large public college. I'm pretty sure Texas A&M is one of the biggest campuses in the country, maybe the biggest, I don't know, but it's insane, right? You have cost, right? Tuition, scholarships, everything. What majors they have. A lot of schools don't have a lot of majors, so you do want to check. And then location, as well as prestige. So I said prestige does not equal fit. So just because the school is really good does not mean you're going to do good when you're at that school, right? It also depends on what you make out of going to that school. And then in terms of like recommendations that I have, build real relationships, ask early if you need a recommendation letter, have a relationship with the person that you're asking for a recommendation letter, and choose teachers that know you beyond just be a student. And then I have a lot of like support resources. I've heard of there, as well as Scholar which is just me. So I have my own company like separately, but I just include this. If you guys have any questions, like feel free to email me, text me. I'm going to include like my social media as well. So if anyone wants to just reach out, you can. And there's a lot of online creators and sites And I think that's just like a fun way to interact because a lot of these people are way closer to your age. And I think it's just like better that way. Like when I was in high school, I didn't really know a lot of people that were in college to support me. So I kind of went out and looked into like other people. But I think like me, I'm literally 19 and I feel like it helps so much because I can connect with a lot of people that are like still in high school because we're just like so close in age. And yeah, and I think there's like a lot of honestly like TikTok is a great site. My sister always talks about how much she's learned about college from TikTok. So it's just I think using the resources that you have for your own benefit. And then in terms of small scholarships, anything can help, honestly. Like even if you can afford to pay for college completely out of pocket, honestly, don't do it. If you have access to scholarships, use it. There's College Mind, Raise Me, as well as Scholarships 360, and College Board also has scholarships. Sorry. And yeah, that was my entire presentation. Again, I included my phone number as well as email address and my Instagram. I'm pretty active on there, so if anyone wants like DM me for anything, feel free to. But yeah, thank you so much for giving me the platform to talk. If anyone has any questions, let me know. Sure.
But given like 5 minutes, so she can actually take a small break. It was a lot of presentation, lot of stuff that you saw. We will be sending a PDF of whatever you saw earlier, so you should have access to it. The recording should also be available. I wanted to include a couple of things, right? So Zari has been with us for in Parinama for at least 3 years before. As soon as she came from Maryland, she joined us. Her dad works with us as well. Dr. Bharat, he's from Johns Hopkins. If you have ever met him, he also teaches here. His her sister Afrin, she is also working with us. So I think it's a family business now. We've got everybody from Arif's family working with us. So they've been very helpful on providing some of the insights that we talked about. A couple of small things changed in the past. I think the first thing that I wanted to talk about, if you had talked to me personally, I think some of you who have talked to me personally, some of the timelines that Zareen had mentioned, we had always had a different time, right? And the reason we had a different timeline is basically because we want to be ahead of the game. So we always talk about an August timeline, August 1st for all of the Texas universities, just because as she mentioned the UC applications open, but also the applied Texas also opens at the same time. So we have seen a lot of our students apply by August 1st to mainly like UT Dallas, A&M, and the four board, which is of course the UT Austin and UT San Antonio, Texas Tech for some of them, and very rarely we see Texas State. But we try to wrap them up by August 1st. We always joke around saying there are 3 countries in US. There is Texas, there is 48 states, and then there's California. Right? All three are independent of each other. Texas, August 1st, 48 states by September 1st, and October 1st for California. California is one of the unique ones. Of course, they do not have most of the colleges that you saw, which are public, they do not have a ED. So if you're really following all the colleges like me, you just recently learned like a week or two ago that Michigan just dropped a big thing saying they're going to do ED. Early decision is very unique. You need to, it's a way for them. Each state has their own rules. Like Texas, I don't know the number. I believe it's about 70 or 80% of the residents must be in the college. It's like they are mandated. Michigan is 51% of 50%. That means they can take 45% out of state. Michigan would charge them like $80,000 per year. 80,000, remember. Like in UT is about 15,000. It's the same tier. It's very similar. And like she mentioned many times, you could be a Wolverine. You may understand what Wolverine is if you are going to Michigan, but you should also know what the long one is. And before you jump out, you have to also do your research in state and out of state. It's not just the prestige. All of these tiered colleges are similar, but again, also talk to your parents in terms of having some financial consideration as well, just because that's also a part that plays in these. As she mentioned a couple of times, there used to be a time where the SAT and ACT scores were optional. Right now, California is still holding on to it. There are some colleges which are still holding on to it. There was a big research done by Columbia, and the research was done by the dean. But what they figured out, which was really intriguing, was they have access to all your SAT and ACT scores. They do. Even if you submit, even if you don't submit, they do. They do not tap into it. It's not legal. It's not allowed. They cannot give the information directly, but they can scramble the data and get it, which is what they did. They didn't take the personal information. Once they ran the report, what they found is a lot of people from lower social economic status, mainly they're talking about Hispanics and African Americans, those kids were doing well. They had like a, a good GPA. Let's say they had a GPA of 3.7 or 3.6. And they had a good SAT, maybe about 14, 20 or 14, 15, good enough in their economic status. There's something called school profile. Based on the school profile, this is an assignment for all of you. Google for school profile. Every single school has a profile. And the school profile is something that the colleges use while they actually do the decision. They take you, and on the right side, they will keep the school profile. If the school is in, Alabama, and they only offer 3 AP courses, and the kid has taken 3 AP courses, that kid is considered better than a kid in Vista Ridge when they were offered 20 AP courses and they took 6 AP courses. They compare what is the rigor of education she talked about, and did you really take everything that was offered? So not just about the number of courses you did, it's also about the rigor of education you did. So they look at school profile. That file is available as a PDF. You should be able to find it if not ask a counselor to get it. As you pointed many times, I also remind all the kids that be nice to your counselors because your counselor will write a recommendation letter. It is needed. It's not even optional. It's not even a joke. It is needed. So your counselor's recommendation letter is very, very critical. The other one that she pointed out, which is what you should be doing if you're a senior now, is getting the brag sheet to your teachers and have the recommendation letters ready, right? Because as soon as the school starts, a lot of teachers have to fill that. So that's something that is very critical there. So the SAT scores and ACT scores are not optional anymore. Most of the universities are asking for it, and they are in fact demanding either the entire history. That means if you've taken 3 or 6 of these attempts, some of them want to see all 6. Some of them want super score. Some of them just want the highest of the 3. So there are different strategies they are using now just because of what Columbia did. I think after Columbia, Yale did the same thing. And then I believe Harvard also did the same thing. They all were able to figure out that the SAT and ACT scores are very important for their decision making because those are the first 2 levels of decision that they use. They use your grades and then they use your SAT, ACT score. Then they go after the extracurricular that Zareen was talking about. So again, we talked about depth, she talked about a lot of different timelines and a lot of different things that we learned from her. Right? The critical thing I think we do have to take away from here is again spend some time with Zareen, try to understand any of the things that we are missing out here. Because one is the college list. I keep repeating to a lot of parents that, as she mentioned, I joke, my son is here, he also not like the joke, but I always say, in your 2 kids, you always send the first kid as a lab rat and see everything that's working. If the rat comes back, then you send the human back, right? So Zareen get like 40 or 50, then her sister just gets to do 20. I'm sure her brother will do like 5 or 6. So that's a way we are understanding the system, right? Most of us are immigrants, we are learning the system. So when we understand, we panic at the beginning. And she does 40 application, each application costs a lot of money, time, and energy, and she'll put a lot of stuff into it. So did Arnav, so did all the first one kids who go through it. And then it comes the second one, like, why do you have to go through that? I will guide you. Let's just do 20 or let's do 10. And that helps, right? We really learn from these kids who have gone through the system to understand first how many of these applications we have to do, when we have to do them, because like I said, I really believe in submitting them early. There are a lot of case studies on why you should submit them early. If it's opening on August 1st, if you do submit on August 1st, it shows to the counselors and decision makers that with a timestamp that you are eager. What is early decision? She talked about it. It's a binding one, right? So when you're doing early action, you can Google for this. I think only 10 or 20 of the public universities are offering ED. Michigan is one that just offered, but not many do ED. UT Austin will not offer ED. None of them will offer ED. There are flavors of ED, but ED is binding. It is binding where you will sign it, and your counselor will sign it, and parents have to sign it. And if you do not join, there are repercussions for the school and for the person. So ED, be very careful. You may not come across many of the EDs, but you may come across the REAs, restrictive early action, which is nothing but similar to ED. Again, try to find which of the universities are offering and you have to do a lot of research there. So again, you can ask us, you can Google, you can figure out the timelines. So the big thing is college list, timelines, activities, essays, and a lot more that was covered here. I really thankful for Zareen here because Zareen is a writer will be a doctor, or a doctor will be a writer. I am not really sure either way. One of my favorite authors is Atul Gavnade. He's the head of Harvard Business Medical School, and he has written a couple of books. One is called Checklist Manifesto, but he has many books that he has written. So I do know that there are authors in the industry who are actually doctors, and that really helps because they are not just going to focus on medical field, but also on their passion of writing. So I'm really glad that she was able to articulate a lot of these things here. So with that said, we will stop the recording. And then, we will still be here and you can ask more questions to Zareen. And then later on, as she pointed out, she will also send her details and it will also be the PDF that will be available and you can contact her for further details. And let's give a big round of applause again.